I'm Sarah Russell.
I'm JQ Walker.
Mint, and we are
The Neurodivergent Report, a research-based podcast by and for neurodivergent brains.
In each episode, we'll explore topics relating to neurodiversity and coping strategies by reviewing the literature and discussing current topics.
We will also have interview episodes where we sit down with experts in the field and listeners like you, with the hope that together we can all learn to heal in community.
However you are able to engage, thank you for being here.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to Neurodivergent Report. If you're tuning in again, thanks so much. I am one of your hosts, JQ Walker, here with my other host, Sarah Russell.
Hello.
And we are very excited to have back once again. Actually, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Dr. Nechama Sorscher. I'm a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, and I have a particular area of interest and expertise in working with children and adults with neurocognitive challenges. I've written 2 books on the topic, and one in particular that I want to kind of highlight today is one for parents and teachers. And I'm very excited about this episode because we're really going to be talking about a subject that's so near and dear to my heart, which is how to help parents, how to help you guys advocate for your kids. And you are the best advocate for your child and the best person to educate everybody else about your child. And that's what my book is about. But more importantly, that's what my work is about. So I'm really excited to talk about it with Sarah and with JQ.
We're so excited to have you here. And this is going to be the perfect topic because when you guys are hearing this, it should be about back to school time.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, the timing is right for this. And we're just excited just to jump in here with you. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. This is amazing. I think, let's see. Yeah, I'll just go with the actual flow of the questions because it works. So I think just for the framing of this episode, we're just gonna start with some basics. When you say that a child, or when we say that a child is neurodivergent, what does that mean at school in an educational context?
So basically, there are a number of disorders or learning differences that have a neurocognitive etiology. They have a neurocognitive basis. They are about how your child or your brain is wired. And there's a lot of research on this, which is very interesting. But for example, children with dyslexia, when you do a PET scan of their brains, different areas light up than children without dyslexia. So we know that there is a hard wiring, and that's very important because sometimes we'll say the kid has behavior problems, the kid is not motivated, the kid is lazy, the kid is, God forbid, stupid, and the kid feels that way. And really it's because the synapses or the neurons are not firing in the correct way. So when your child is running into problems, either in school or at home or on the playground, there could very well be a neurocognitive etiology. And that's when it becomes very important for you as a parent to identify that, to get them tested, and to advocate for services in school. And it could very well be that your kid is very smart. So your kid is seemingly fine. And I'll just give an example of a high school senior that came to see me. And this is after years of torment, okay? And years of being told that he was lazy and he wasn't trying and he was unmotivated. And when I spoke to him, he told me, Dr. Sorscher, I hate school and I'm not motivated and I have no passion for anything. I'm not interested in anything. And I tested him and he had very severe ADD, very severe difficulty focusing, organizing, being able to get it together, paying attention, so on and so forth. Diagnosed him, put him on medicine, treated him in therapy, and lo and behold, he is in his 3rd year of college. He is majoring in physics and doing very well.
Wow.
And all he really needed was to understand, I'm not lazy. So the minute I hear anybody say about a child or an adult, if they only put in enough effort, they would be fine, then I know there is a problem. So there are flags that you can identify, even if your child is getting A's and B's, by the way. This child was not, obviously. But let's say your child's getting A's and B's, but your child is coming home exhausted. Your child is complaining. Your child does not want to go to school. That's already enough of a red flag to try to see if an evaluation can be of use.
Yeah, because most kids enjoy being at school. They enjoy the social interaction with their peers. Like those times are limited in this modern day. Like they don't go outside and play after school. So yeah, it's definitely a red flag.
Often the child has trouble with grapple motor with the pencil and paper, and that's a red flag as well. So, and now we don't really focus that much on handwriting, and sometimes we don't
Yeah.
even teach script, which I think is very unfortunate. But that is definitely a red flag if your child is having trouble forming the letters or writing sloppily or having trouble organizing them on the page. All of that can be a big red flag, actually. And you're 100% right about
Interesting.
the parts of the brain. And in my book, I explain actually very specifically, for example, that attention issues are related to the frontal lobe and that the language-based learning disorders are in the left side of the brain. And we have identified very specific centers.
That is such valuable information.
Yeah.
What is your book, if anybody who's listening is wondering?
You're a neurodiverse child, how to help kids with learning, attention, and neurocognitive challenges thrive. And it's for parents and teachers, as I said.
Yeah.
And it does go into in great detail all the things that every single question that you asked is in the book.
Amazing.
It's your go-to
If I hadn't
one-stop
written the book
shop.
already, I would have gotten it from your podcast. So no need to buy the book. The book
Yeah.
is your podcast.
No. Well, then we won't answer all the questions then.
Yeah.
Save your secrets. No, I think the next important question is like really briefly, what is the difference between an IEP and a 504? Because I was confused. It was never super explained to me, but just when I don't know, just my experience being in a 504 meeting, it's just like a couple of school people, the teacher, the principal, maybe the school social worker, and then me. But when I went in for my younger son's IEP meeting, there were like 7 professionals, people who've never met him before. And I was like, all this because he's not speaking yet? Like,
That's a very good question. And it also is important for everybody to know the difference because you get different services.
yeah,
So a 504 is
different legal rights.
very different legal rights. A 504 is very informal. It can definitely be activated just by a letter, let's say, even from your pediatrician. Okay. The letter could just say, this child's been diagnosed with ADD and he meets criteria for getting certain accommodations in the classroom. And it also really limits what you can ask for. So, for example, you can't even ask for your child to be placed in an ICT classroom, which is a classroom with an extra teacher, special education teacher, on the basis of a 504. So you have to be very clear. If all you want is a very limited amount of services, let's say you want extended time for your kid, you want separate testing in a separate location, you want the teacher to tap him on the shoulder every time he looks distracted, those are issues that you can address with a 504. And as you said, Sarah, all you really need is you, maybe the school social worker, maybe not, the principal, the teacher. It's very, very informal. An IEP is a legal document which entitles your child to legal rights, which is why they very often try to push a 504 when really you need an IEP. And I often will say to the parents, you know what, you need to go for an IEP because you want the kid, let's say, to be in a collaborative classroom, the ICT, or you want your kid to get SETS. SETS is when your child meets with a special education teacher, either one-on-one or in a small group, or you want your child to be in special education. You need an IEP because the IEP is what gives you the legal rights, and that's very important, to advocate for your child. So if you want anything above and beyond extra time and some informal accommodations in the classroom, if you want curriculum modification, anything like that, you want busing, anything like that, you need an IEP. And the IEP also, you need a very specific report, not just a letter from your doctor. You need a complete report. And sometimes if you ask them, let's say for speech and language services or for occupational therapy services or anything like that, you need a report from them. So very often you need like 5 reports. The neuroscience.
They're going to do evaluations. They're going to go observe the child in the classroom to see if they qualify. I think also this was really confusing to me. ADHD didn't automatically qualify for an IEP because it's not a real disability under the eyes of the law.
Not because it's not a real disability under the eyes of the law. It's because the Board of Education has decided that they're not qualified to diagnose ADD. And when
that's true.
Well, the reason why is because when you go for an evaluation through the Board of Education, they don't give tests of attention. Okay. So if you're worried that your kid is ADD, you really need to get your kid tested privately because you're not going to get an ADD diagnosis through the Board of Ed. What you might get is they might say, we're suspecting it, and we are going to say that you should go to a neurologist or a psychiatrist. Very long, cumbersome procedure, but you can do that. Now, what they do is, let's say your child is diagnosed with ADD by a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist writes a letter. They put it under other health impairment. They do not recognize ADD as a diagnosis where you can get services through the Board of Education. That does not mean that they don't recognize it as a disorder. I think what they're trying to do is say that it's behavioral or medical, but it doesn't make that much sense because if a kid has diabetes, for example, God forbid, they are entitled, right, to all kinds of things, breaks and testing accommodations and classroom accommodations, and it's a medical diagnosis. So they really need to stop ignoring ADD. But so far, they've ignored ADD, and I think it's just a matter of saving money. Personally,
That's
doesn't
exactly what I was thinking. It reminds me of like insurance policies where like they only include like certain, like they try to exclude certain
Right.
diagnoses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just gonna keep passing it.
I think what's happened is like neuropsych has learned a lot and the legal system has been resistant to like take that information on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
because
really
it
funny.
does mean spending more money on public health.
God
Okay.
forbid. Oh my
Gosh,
God.
I know.
So there's other
But
disorders
this-
too that they won't recognize. For example, they
Yeah.
will not recognize auditory processing disorder. They will not recognize sensory integration disorder. And these are real disorders that cause the kids havoc in the classroom. I mean, we're talking about tremendous distress and easy fixes, by the way. And they will not recognize it. They will not put any money into it. So it's not just ADD. It's some of it, I think, is like what you said, that the science is advancing. Let's say ADD really, people got very into it in the 70s with Hallowell. He really put it on the map. Auditory processing is also like 20 years old. This woman, Donna Geffner, she put that on the map. So, nonverbal learning disorder is another one that they will not recognize. So, and that's also, Sue Thompson put that on the map in the 70s. But these are all very important learning differences that it's very important for you guys, parents, to understand that your kid has something, even if the Board of Ed says, we don't believe in it. You need to advocate, and you can, by the way, get a lawyer, you can do an appeal, and you will win, by the way, because the science is behind you. It's not behind them.
A question that I'm having then, I know that you just said that parents can, if they're able to like get a lawyer, like make a case for themselves, but is advocating for your child the only way that people can really make a difference? And because I'm just not really that educated on how like the Board of Education works. Like, is there some kind of way to like vote people in who, support the science? Like, is there any other kind of change that people can do to like kind of swing the pendulum in the right direction, or not really?
It's a really good question. I worked as a school psychologist at the Board of Education. I have 3 children, 2 of whom got extensive services through the Board of Education. And I counsel, 40 parents a year, let's say, and how to deal with the Board of Education. So I think I do understand the Board of Education pretty well.
Yeah.
And I say this, it has nothing to do with
Who's on the board?
on the board. It is a Byzantine, cumbersome, bureaucratic system that does move very slowly.
It's like a grassroots, like regional, like it has to be like a mindset shift in the whole area.
For sure.
More so than
Okay.
But I think the thing that
Wait,
makes the most difference is parents. And when an overwhelming number of parents, right, put a lot of pressure, and they actually have to pay out a lot of money. They paid my family, I can't even tell you how much money for services for my kids. And they were fabulous. When more people do that, then they'll be like, oh, we need to start doing this in-house. We have to stop. This is not working for us. We need to provide better services for our community and better services for the kids who are in our system. And I think it's just a money. It's all about money. And if it saves them money, they're going to do it. So I think eventually, and I've seen a lot of evidence of this. I'm not just saying this because I'm an optimistic person. I am an optimistic person. But I think that the science and parent advocacy seeps into the classroom. The teachers are parents too, by the way. And they have children who have problems, by the way. So then they start saying, your kid needs this, and I know how to get it because my kid needed it, and so on and so forth.
I want to remind everyone that teachers are some of the original union members.
That's right.
Yeah. And parents are the original teachers. So definitely It's all connected. We all play very important roles. I love this conversation. I love that question, Jay. I don't know. I live in like a rural town in Connecticut, and we constantly are having like school budget issues, and they're like, oh, the budget's too high. And it's like, fund our schools,
Yeah.
please, every single year. So I finally went to like one of those town meetings, and it was just so cumbersome anyway. But it got me thinking, like, well, what if I was sitting on the board, and what if I had to like listen to this all the time? Like, actually, I don't know if I could make a good difference, like if I could control my own mental health in this setting. So anyway, there's a role for everyone.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got a little sidetracked.
No, but actually, I think that segues us. Oh, sorry.
I want to ask a very important question, because sometimes we get overwhelmed in these meetings, and especially when we're advocating and things aren't maybe going so well. I personally need scripting in advance, and like particular language that we can use that'll make people stop in their tracks. So I unfortunately learned this piece of information too late. But if you're sort of feeling backed into a corner as a parent in a 504 or an IEP meeting, you can always just stop and ask for a legal advocate, because you are entitled to have someone there that the school has to pay for, to sort of advocate for you, and sort of communicate for you in cases like where you get emotionally nonverbal. Let's coin that.
Yes.
Like that. That's exactly right. And it's interesting. And I think there is a difference between the rural and the city. So I want to clarify that I'm talking about New York City. That's what I know about. I really don't know much about the rural piece, but
Mhm.
I will say that you are entitled to a parent advocate. And actually, in New York City, they immediately assign you a parent advocate.
Oh,
So you don't
yikes.
even have to ask. You don't even have to ask. They just give you a parent advocate.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
so sad for me.
No.
And that's good. You needed that. I will say
Yeah.
this too. You do not need to agree to anything. In fact, it's fine if you say, hey, thank you so much for your time. And I really appreciate all these suggestions. I need to think about it. I am not signing anything right now. And you don't have to do anything before you go home, talk to all your support people, post it on Facebook, get yourself informed before you sign off. And you will get
And that's not dramatic.
no.
No,
That
it is
is
not.
okay.
No, it's not being dramatic. It's being precautious and getting all the information you need to make a decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is a big decision because there's nothing more important than your child's self-esteem and your child's
Yeah.
happiness. And that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about even about academic success, even though I think academic success is very important. But more important, actually, because your child eventually will learn how to read and do math and do everything. But the scars that it leaves when your child feels bad about themselves, that lasts a lifetime.
This quite literally changes the course of their life.
That's
you
right.
know?
So you have to be very careful. And I always tell parents, listen to me. Do not agree to anything. Listen to what they have to say and then call me up and we'll have another conversation. And it's interesting. And I remember this from a long time ago. There was a mom who I tested all her kids. I kid you not, she had 5. And she told me that she had a lot of confidence going into the meetings because of what I said to her. And she was able to get the services for her kids based on me empowering her. So I think you have to feel empowered that eventually you will get what your kid needs. Eventually, they will listen to you. Usually, the first round, they're going to say no way. But second and third round, they're going to give it to you. If you're asking for something within reason, like she wanted resource room services for her kid. This was a long time ago when they had resource room. And I'll never forget her emailing me and telling me, I was able to get it. And I thought, of course you're able to get it. For me, it's a no-brainer. But for parents, you're nervous. You get in there because all these professionals, and like you said, you don't know them. Some of them don't even know your kid. And they're all telling you, oh, no, your kid is fine. They don't need anything, whatever it is. So you are at a loss and you become emotionally nonverbal, as Sarah just said. So you need to understand that you have every right for advocacy and support, and you do not need to agree to everything or anything right away. And nothing's going to happen. You can come back to them and you can say, you know what, I thought about it and it's fine. Like nothing is going to happen. People are worried that somebody's going to be mad at them. They're going to take it out on their child. You get very emotional and a little
We
bit.
already struggle with social interaction, so of course we're going to overanalyze it from like every perspective.
And
And
it's about
so,
your
yeah,
kid, you know?
we need to do some processing time. It's totally fine. It's probably more common than we think.
Oh, it should be.
And
If
if
it's
it
not
isn't,
more
it should
common,
be.
it should.
It should be the
Exactly.
norm.
Yeah.
I also think
Not
that's very
everyone's with
normal.
one people.
Yeah, like just the idea of like having somebody like in their corner like you, I think is really helpful, especially for parents that are neurodivergent themselves. We talk a lot about on this show about like trusting your brain and learning that, you are that if you are neurodivergent, like learning about how probably you don't trust your brain and you don't trust like the feelings in your body. You just don't trust a lot. And I think that if you're still in that process of growing in that way, that having people in your corner, especially someone who is very knowledgeable, who is a licensed professional, and you feel like you can even like convince other people better. I think that it is so valuable to have.
Definitely.
Sarah, I don't know where you want
Yeah,
to jump to next in
that's
terms
a
of
great
questions.
question. I don't even know either because I'm just sort of thinking about the differences between the big
The
city systems and the sort of rural systems.
I know that you said you're more familiar with the city, but
Yeah, no, and
if
that's okay. That's okay. I think what happens there is usually like the future of what ends up happening everywhere. It's just really slow.
mm,
I agree. And I do work with people from Connecticut, like from different states, New Jersey,
Hmm.
Connecticut, Westchester. And what I find is it's really variable also with the school district.
mm,
And you mentioned also the funding. So if the parents are very involved, if it's like a really strong PTA and
mm,
they do bake sales and they bring in money, that also makes a big difference in terms of like each particular school has its own kind of climate. The principal sets the tone. So I've seen even, let's say, schools in Westchester, some schools in Westchester are very supportive, and some schools, I've never seen anything like it. They don't want to give the kids anything. And some of that has to do with the principal. Some of it has to do with
Yeah.
the ideological perspective, and some of it is financial.
oh yeah.
So I think, you can make a difference on different levels.
I grew up in Westchester, so I
Huh?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't want to harp on the education system or on teachers or anything because they honestly are
Yeah.
being asked to do so much already. But it was really surprising to me how little mental health training they receive,
Mm,
considering they are responsible for childhood development. I think that definitely extends into the administrations because usually those are staffed by like educators. And yeah, so that does really set the tone for sort of like what we know is what we can provide. And if somebody knows that ADHD or autism is just like, oh, you're just difficult, then that's sort of the mindset they're going to be wanting to help you from. So,
yeah.
not at all. I wonder if the future is like teaching our education system, our education professionals more about neurodivergence.
Neurodiversity training, like
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there initiatives about I know social and emotional learning has just gotten huge. Um, but it's not super neurodivergent informed, but it's a start.
I would say this. I would say education and advocacy are very important. And I would say the popular discourse is also very important. And the popular discourse, let's just say on autism, has changed dramatically in the last decade. And I would credit shows such as Love on the Spectrum and also podcasts such as this one for really changing the popular understanding and discourse, which is what's going to change the perspective of the schools. And, I've been in this business for a long time. So 30 years ago, if I would say to a parent and a child that they have ADD, they would act as if I was telling them that they were going to the
like
electric
a
chair.
death sentence or yeah.
Kid you not. I'll never forget it. One of my first cases, I had this teenage boy diagnosed with ADD. The father went out of his mind, and I never got paid. I was like,
Wow.
Oh my god.
that was a long time ago. And I was kind of like, oh my goodness. And I was so unprepared, right? Because to me, I was living in this one world where ADD was, whatever, it's fine. This bright kid, he'll be fine. And now I have kids coming into me, right? 11, 12 years old, Dr. Sorscher, I have ADD, Dr. Sorscher, I have OCD, Dr. Sorscher, I have autism, and they're correct and everything is fine. And I believe that that's going to profoundly influence the administration, our teachers, and so on and so forth, because they're part of, they're part of this discourse. And the younger generation is fabulous. They are just the
Yes, they
best, they're great. So I think that that's really, key to what we're talking about. And I think the other thing is people who are talking about it, writing about it, sharing, most importantly, famous people, influencers, saying, I have this, I have that, this made a big difference to me. It really destigmatizes it because part of the real problem has to do with stigma, right? And if you have this choice. Okay, I can say my kid is ADD, or I can say my kid is a horrible child. I might go to the horrible child if I feel like ADD is a death sentence, right? But if I feel like ADD is no big deal, it's like wearing glasses, then I'm very happy to say my kid is ADD.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also you touched on something really interesting that kind of I just had like a little thought mini spiral about. So you were saying that celebrities coming out saying that they're struggling with certain things can be really helpful. And I think that makes sense on like a surface level of just being like, oh, people that you look up to, they say they have this thing. So it becomes normal. You see an example of it. I think one of like another level to that is like, so Sarah and I are not famous people. And if people tune into our podcast and they don't know us at all, they don't have any preconception of us, and we say, I have ADHD and autism, or like I have ADHD, they might judge us and like perceive certain things that we're doing under that lens. But if you have a celebrity who you have a strong, a strong conception of at least the way that they brand themselves to you, because you don't know celebrities personally, that then instead it can change your understanding of what ADHD or autism looks like. And I think that is really helpful because like I do agree that Love on the Spectrum, for example, like I have mixed feelings about Love on the Spectrum, but one thing that like I think it does help to create just more examples of just showing different people with autism. But sometimes I do think that they lean a little bit into like these are autistic people and sometimes infantilizing them. And one thing to like compare to that is there's this one Jubilee video where, and Sarah, I've talked to you about this before, where like they have three like influencers with autism who like all are very, very different. And they have to like, they have a line of people in front of them. And for each person that comes up to them, they talk to them for like a minute and then they swipe like yes or no if they think they have autism. So you don't know until the end who actually does and doesn't. And you're hearing all these people talk. And there's some people who you might think have autism, but they actually don't. And there's a lot of people who like mask really well or just are just maybe a female or so like they present differently. So I think that something like that did a really good job, at least in my opinion.
Autism does look different with different people. It just does.
Yeah.
We should get a Love on the Spectrum with some B-list celebrities.
Yes.
What season or what network does this? We need to find the person
we
to
gotta
pitch
get
it
on
to.
that.
I love it, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, my child is almost 12 years old. We're starting puberty, so like they're changing now, but definitely not a strong advocate for their own needs. And so I'm always guessing like, what do you need? What do you need? And I don't always get it right.
I think it's very important to talk about red flags. So I'll say this. A red flag is if your kid does not enjoy reading, does not read for pleasure. Now, this is a little controversial because nowadays many, many, many children don't read for pleasure. However, I have to say this. Usually what the parents will tell me is that they did read for pleasure in first grade and second grade and third grade. And by fourth or fifth grade, they stop. And it's not just because they started playing roadblocks. Okay. That is part of it.
It is part of it.
That's part of it, but it's not the only reason. Even if they don't pick up a book voluntarily, right? I ask the parent, well, when they're reading something, do they enjoy it? Will they say, hey, I read something interesting? And the answer is no. That's a red flag because a bright child will be interested in getting information. Will they gravitate it naturally the way we used to before roadblocks appeared? No, but they still.
That is so interesting because my kid is constantly telling me things that he's learned from listening to videos, but never stuff that he's read on the internet or like maybe memes that he's seen, but never like,
That's
articles
important.
he's read. Very
That's
interesting.
definitely a red flag. That's one big red flag. As I talked about before, the other red flag is if the kid doesn't like it, doesn't like school, says school is boring, I hate it. And again, is school sometimes boring? Sure. But again, most kids like school, not just because they see their friends, which of course is a big draw, but because kids like information. they're curious. So if your kid either is not curious, has no interest, has no passion, big red flag, big red flag. Okay. Another red flag is their performance inconsistent? Meaning, sometimes they do very well and sometimes they do very poorly. I don't care if your kid gets in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 90s, it should be a flat like this. If there's peaks and valleys, or what we call an erratic profile, particularly within a subject. Now, this is very interesting. Like this happens. The kid gets 100 on one test, and then lo and behold, they get 60 on the other one. I know for sure there's a problem. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, they might be fine, like they're getting A's and B's, but it's very inconsistent. Okay. So that's another problem. The other issue is if you see that your child is having trouble keeping up with the social demands. And again, your child could be having friends. Okay. We're talking about somebody who it's subtle, right? So the subtle is your child has friends. But for example, when they meet new people and they meet new adults, they're very shy. Okay. Or they have trouble going into a store and asking the storekeeper for where the tomatoes are. You need to keep a lookout on those very subtle things because that will show you that they actually are having trouble with social demands, even though they have a nice group of friends and even though they have a nice relationship with you. So those are subtle red flags that actually are screaming to me when I hear that stuff. I'm like, okay, I know there's something going on. I know that for sure. And children also don't get anxiety in a vacuum. So if your child is getting stressed out, and again, children do not express anxiety the way we do. They don't come in and be like, "Oh, I'm freaking out. I'm having a panic attack." No, they have stomach aches. They have headaches. They have trouble sleeping. They have trouble eating. They get irritable. They get grouchy. Any of those signs, you want to see if there's something going on.
I'm trying to think of more personal examples of like weird stuff that they've done. But yeah, I mean, really we've given so much here. I love the inconsistent part.
Yeah.
That's so important.
I want to say one other thing, sorry.
Yeah.
Every child
Amazing.
reacts very much to the teacher. Okay. So if it doesn't have to do so much with the topic, but with the teacher, and the child will say that. It doesn't matter to me what the topic is. If I like the teacher, I do well. If I don't like the teacher, I don't do well. Big red flag. Why? Usually the teacher is doing something to accommodate the child. And sometimes we do that very unconsciously.
Or
We
the
do-
opposite.
Or the opposite. Exactly right.
Strong communication preferences.
That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like that's very reflective of my experience.
And you don't even realize it. I
Yeah.
would see it if I observed in the classroom, which I often do. And I see very quickly why the child is responding or not responding, right? But the teacher might be completely unaware of it. They're unconsciously responding. Or the parent. I have lots of parents who tell me, well, my kid understands me perfectly. I'm like, yeah, sure. Because you go down to their level, look them in the eye, make sure they're looking at you, and say one thing very clearly. So, of course, they are fine with you. If everybody would do that, we would be fine, but not everybody does. Some people mumble. Some people are not checking in. The child's not going to hear one more.
But my kid actually needed less time in the classroom, but there's no like accommodation for like more recess.
Yeah.
I actually have come up with one. I love that. So I'm going to just do like little categories. So accommodations for ADD, for example. So one thing I do is I suggest what I call movement breaks. Other people call this too, but it kind of is a nice way of framing it. And basically what I'll say is either the child is told that they can have however many movement breaks that they want. And a movement break could be that they leave the classroom and they do 10 jump jacks, or they leave the classroom and they run up and down the stairs, or they leave the classroom and they go for an errand, So the parent and the child and the teacher arrange that. These children really need more motor outlets, and we do not give our kids enough motor outlets in general. So movement breaks is a great way of doing that. Sometimes I say every half an hour. So, or sometimes I say at the end of a task, because again, these kids are very impulsive and they're quick actually. Sometimes they're too quick, but we can take advantage of them. They're like, okay, you're going to do that quick, lickety split. So when you're done, this is what I want you to do. I want you to come pick up all the papers and put them in the garbage and then run outside and then come back. And that changes the child's day. Okay. You can do this at home too. If they're doing homework, I always say half an hour is more than enough. They have to get up, get some fresh air, get a cup of water, run around, jump on a ball, whatever. Now, the other thing is seating. So seating can be very important And this is, again, something that you as parents can do. But sometimes just having the kind of the sensory experience of sitting on something that gives them a little more sensory input. So they have these little seats that have these little ridges. That's all it is. It's like a
Yes.
cushion. Put it on their seat and they feel so much better. There's also some seats that you can kick and bounce and whatever. But if you don't want to get so fancy, you don't have to get so fancy. You can just get a little cushion. You can even just get a cushion, a regular cushion. Could be very helpful
That's
too.
so true. I know exactly the
Huh.
ones that you're talking about. It was suggested by like an occupational therapist, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, they're sort of
Yeah,
like
they're
those
just like little
little
ridges. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, little bumps.
little bumps. Another thing that can be very helpful is headphones. So one thing that, let's say, people with ADD have, but also people with autism and also people that have auditory processing issues, they're extremely distracted by noise. And noise is very aversive to them. So there's nothing wrong with giving them some noise canceling headphones so that when all the class is doing a task, they have their noise canceling headphones on. Why? The rustling of the papers and the mumbling to themselves and the, kicking the chair, it
Clocks.
disrupts them. So
Yeah.
yes, it calms them down to have that sense of I'm in a quiet, safe space.
The
Okay.
way I've always explained it is like it's the noise that you're controlling. Like you're expecting this background noise, but I'm not expecting somebody to drop their stack of papers on the floor. And
Exactly.
that surprised me and that startled me out of my task. But this I chose. I think it's like partly autonomy, but yeah, partly the impulsivity. It's like the perfect storm for an ADHD person.
Yeah.
But yeah, even for 10-year-olds, they really struggle like allowing them that accommodation, I think.
They do, but that's again where you can you can advocate and you can say to your child and the teacher,
Yeah.
whatever, okay, let's figure out when it's okay to wear it, when it's not, because sometimes children don't really know. So the
Of
same
course.
thing with the movement breaks, the same thing with what I explain to the kids. This is something I explain to the kids, which is it's always okay to space out for a moment. It's always okay to take your pencil and just look at your pencil for a moment. Whenever you're feeling fatigued, give yourself a little break. And I teach them how to do that. And they need to be taught. And that also makes a huge difference because it's kind of like one way to explain it is that attention is like a muscle, right? And we need to exercise it. But if you overuse your muscles, then you can't do anything. Then you're sore. So I'm always like, stop before you fatigue. Give yourself a little break. You'll look, the teachers always repeating themselves. We always repeat ourselves. So you're not going to miss something horribly important if you just space out for a moment. And if you do that, it means then that you're not going to have to look out the window for 30 minutes in the next class. So I try to help them regulate that, explain that to them. So these are all ways that you can help your child. And I also tell the teacher, I'm like, hey, if you see that the kid is flagging and getting irritable and getting tired, just remind them, say, hey, you can take a break. Close your eyes for a minute. Take a break. I'll give you 5 minutes. Set the timer and give them 5 minutes. It's not a hard thing to do.
No, it just takes intention and I think the knowledge. Yeah. Gosh,
Well, I
these
think that's
parent
the thing
teachers, they're
that's
doing it for like every single kid now.
yeah.
Well, that's the thing too. For example, sometimes I'll say to a teacher, this kid really doesn't understand directions when you tell them. So you either can repeat the directions or you can give them a written, set of directions. And I say, you know what, this is probably good for all the kids to either repeat the directions or give them a written set. So
Yeah.
sometimes it actually makes the teacher's life easier because they are, being clear and accommodating, let's say, and you're right, in any given classroom, there's at least 5 kids who could
Mhm.
benefit from it's
Mhm.
not only the child that we're talking about. I want to
Yeah.
say something about the accommodations for autism, which is similar. They don't need movement breaks, but what they need is sensory breaks. And
Mm.
sometimes what they need is to go and find a quiet, dark space where they can just kind of decompress. And sometimes what I'll say to them is, is it possible for them to eat lunch, for example, in a quieter space? The lunchroom can be very overwhelming for these kids.
Yeah.
So I'll say, why don't they eat lunch in a quieter space? That's a good example of an accommodation that's, again, pretty easy to implement, right? And makes a huge difference in the day because the kid is being overloaded with stimuli. So,
It's so funny because that lunch detention is usually a punishment.
Mhm.
it's really up to the kid. Sometimes the kids will say, no, I want to eat with my friends, but very often they'll say, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they'll have plenty of time with their friends because they'll see their friends at recess. And lunch is a torture for them because it is so noisy. And
So
even with the
loud.
noise canceling headphones, it's not fun. And anyway, with the noise canceling headphones, they're not socializing anyway with their friends.
Right.
So, and a lot of times food overwhelms them with the texture and the smell. So, giving them little breaks like that, the autism spectrum kids, is very important.
Yeah. This I think also transitions us nicely then to kind of our other question here of since we're talking about accommodations, what would you say to a parent or caregiver who's afraid that asking for accommodations will stigmatize or limit their child?
I love that question. I used to get that reaction a lot, by the way,
Yeah.
as I told you,
Yeah.
even let's say in terms of getting extra time. So I would say the kid needs extra time, and the parent would say, well, I can't do that because it'll stigmatize the kid and it will impact their acceptance into college and so on and so forth. So I have developed some ideas about this that can
Mm.
help parents understand better why it is important to advocate and why it actually doesn't stigmatize a child. So one idea I have is that your child is in an invisible wheelchair, right? And if we ask the child in the invisible wheelchair to just get up and walk, and we're not sure why you can't just walk, and this is terrible that you're not walking, and in fact, you should really be running, then that really is very frustrating for the child and makes the child feel very bad. So, in
Yeah.
fact, there's some people who would say, oh, we don't approve of your child getting extra time. Sure. But in the end of the day, what's most important, and we'll keep on talking about, is giving our children self confidence. And that's the most important piece. And what's going to give your child the most confidence is getting their needs met. So if your child, let's say, needs glasses, I don't want to hear anyone saying to me, Dr. Sorscher, those glasses are going to make my kid look ugly, and people are not going to want to date them because they have glasses. So I don't want to give them glasses. Well, those people might feel that way, but my child needs glasses. We need to have that perspective about the accommodations. Now, one thing I hear very often that you didn't mention, but I'm going to say, in the real world, people don't get accommodations. So if I give my kid accommodations now, it's a crutch, they're going to get dependent on it, and then they won't be able to function in the real world. And I have a very simple answer for that, which is we all use accommodations in the real world.
Yes.
How do we do that? Well, what we do is we find the things that we're good at and we avoid the things that we're bad at. Now, in school, we can't do that. We teach our kids everything: math, science, history, geography, you name it. They have to be good at everything. That's not the real world. So, in the real world, we find ways to accommodate ourselves. And I know that because I work with a lot of adults who have neurodivergent. And I teach them actually how to help themselves, whether they use coaching, whether they use medicine, whether they use scripts, which you mentioned, Sarah, which is a great way to accommodate. But we use accommodations all the time, whether, by the way, we're neurodiverse or neurotypical, because we all have areas of strength and we all have areas of challenge. And that's why I'm
Yeah.
also very careful to say not learning disorders, but learning differences,
Yeah.
because very often it is a learning difference. Okay.
Mhm.
It's not a disorder in the sense that we're all functioning. We all have our things that we bear to the situation. And it's, yes, could somebody say, well, I don't want to be friends with this child because the child is on the spectrum? Sure. But
Yeah.
upside of understanding that your child is on the spectrum and getting your child to be able to feel comfortable is very much worth the downside. And further, and we just talked about this some more, but if we are advocating for our children and ourselves, and I am going to put a big plug in for self disclosure, because self disclosure, whether you're a celebrity or you're a therapist or you're just a fabulous podcaster, is very important in terms of the person. It helps you feel authentic, it helps
Mm.
you feel integrated, and it helps you destigmatize for yourself. And
Yes.
that, as a parent, is what you need to explain to the child. It's okay. Like my child, for example, has very severe dyslexia. Unbelievable, right? And she's so comfortable, thank God. And she says all the time, like she'll make something up and then she'll say, Mommy, that's my dyslexia. And I'll be like, yeah, that's your dyslexia. And I can tell she's okay with it. She's okay with it because she, from a very early age, was told, you have dyslexia and that's all right. And here are all these things we're going to do for you. You're going to get special school, whatever it is. And there was never any problem with it. So she never thought, oh, having dyslexia is a problem. And that's unbelievable to me because, of course, as a parent, I was very worried about that. How is it going to affect her self esteem? I know she'll learn how to read. Eventually, she will read, which she does read pretty well. Still some issues, but pretty well. But most importantly, she can comfortably say, I have dyslexia. And that's the most important piece for me.
Do those glasses fix everyone with dyslexia?
So
No.
we were on a podcast
Dang.
recently, and I think she's a teacher, and she was saying like, oh, I found out I had autism because my son got tested at the eye doctor and he had like a conversion eye problem, which is like technically a form of dyslexia. And I was like, oh my God, like I went to the eye doctor recently and I have the same thing,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize it was dyslexia. So like it doesn't, I mean, there's forms of dyslexia
It's
where
not-
you just like, where you see like the
Yeah.
symbols differently. So there's different kinds, but
Yeah.
at least the prism glasses are helpful to train my eyes.
For sure. I took my daughter to 2 different developmental ophthalmologists. As you guys, I mean, I know all about this eye piece. And by the way,
Yeah.
it's very effective. And I do want to put a plug in for it because sometimes people don't know about it. And
Yeah.
absolutely, if your child's having trouble reading, run to the developmental ophthalmologist. Get your child evaluated.
Do not walk, run.
Not wrong, right. However, in my case with my child, it did nothing. And that's okay. In other words, is she just didn't have that particular issue.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We, however, in America are much less well educated about this than other countries. For example, Israel is very advanced in that, and they always send the kids to the eye therapist. And very often that does fix the problem. It really does. So I would say, and I do suggest that to kids that I evaluate, I can tell by
Yeah.
now if it is that issue or something else. See, dyslexia primarily is a language. It doesn't have to do with your eyes primarily. So if you do have that eye issue, that can get easily fixed and it's great. And, it saves kids' lives. It really does. But if you don't have it, then you have to obviously do other types of remediation.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just learned about that, and so now I'm just like looking to understand.
No, it's a great.
Amazing. This has been a fantastic episode, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you want to just tell everyone real quick where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's really fabulous. And my PR agent, Jess Panzeri, helped me with it. So it's called Nechama Sorscher, PhD. And then you can just go on Amazon and get my lovely book. And as I said, in the book, it's exactly what we've been talking about, plus some questions that somehow they didn't think to ask me. So you will get some additional information.
Great.
Thank you
And
so
we can
much
link
for
all
being
this stuff.
here.
Yeah.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
oh yeah, for sure. Everything is going to be linked in the show notes. We like to leave that resource heavy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Thanks for being here. If you want to connect with the Neurodivergent Report, you can find us at ND Report Pod on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, Substack, etc.
If you're looking to support the show, the best thing you can do is subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Please do that.
And hey, if you want to check out more about us, visit our website at ndreportpod.com. And you can also go there if you want to be a guest contributor on the show.
Till next time, be well, do good.